Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is one of our many Human Resources Committee webinars. But before I begin, I just want to thank every one of you for your support. In fact, our Human Resources Committee is one of our most active at AMCHAM. In fact, this is our second webinar just this month. Today, I think we're going to discuss a very important topic. It's called Tracking the Future of Jobs and Hiring Trends After COVID-19 in Asia. COVID-19 has greatly changed the nature of jobs and hiring trends in industries across the globe, especially here in Asia. I'm sure so many companies are evaluating their strategies for attracting new talent and engaging new employees. And it's probably the same for people who are looking for the right opportunities as well. Today, we have two experts from PERSOLKELly to discuss the results of their annual salary survey guide. This guide presents labor trends based on market research from many distinguished global organizations. And today, we have three people with us. Allison Lee, who is the practice leader at Kelly Scientific Resources of Kelly Services Korea. We have Wenzi Ho. She is a regional associate director for PERSOLKELly in their Singapore office. And Matthew Jones, who is the foreign attorney at Kim and Chang and one of our co-chairs for the HR committee, who's going to help lead today's session. In fact, Matt Jones has done so many of these webinars that I think he's one of the best in this business today. So thank you very much. And without further ado, the show is yours, Matthew. Thank you. And have a nice day.
Thank you so much, James, and thank you for that very kind introduction. I'm actually here just to introduce our experts from PERSOLKELly, and on behalf of my co-chairs, Yumi Jun from Kelly Korea and Mira Lee from GE. We want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this very interesting presentation. If you are working in HR for a multinational company, you're certainly looking at hiring and you want to know the trends. So I think this is the right place to be for that information. I'm going to introduce briefly our two speakers. The first is Allison Lee. She's a practice leader working for PERSOLKELly Korea in the Scientific Resources Division, and has over 8 years of experience in executive search and C-level assignments, especially in the global healthcare industry, but also medical devices and life sciences companies. Prior to joining Kelly Services Korea, Allison was a senior consultant at a Singapore-based executive search firm specializing in healthcare, where she led senior leadership engagements and brought industry perspectives and strong insights to clients. She has a proven track record in commercial, finance, and technical hiring for clients. The second speaker, Wenzi Ho, is a regional associate director of PERSOLKELly Asia Pacific, based in Singapore. She brings a wealth of experience in diverse industries and specialized knowledge to help companies in developing strategic workforce solutions over the past 12 years. Bringing her deep knowledge of the region's talent landscape, workforce trends, best practices, and regulatory environments, she partners with multinational companies to overcome competitive challenges and develop strategic talent solutions while driving continuous values for PERSOLKELly's most strategic client relationships in the region. So as you can tell, Allison will focus more on the Korean market, Wenzi will focus more on the larger Asia Pacific market, and we certainly welcome any questions that you have along the way. Please feel free to type them into the chat box, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Allison.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, James, and thank you, Matthew, for your kind introduction. My name is Allison Lee. I'm a practice leader at Kelly Scientific Resources Division at PERSOLKELly Korea. It's a pleasure to be invited as a speaker today, and thank you again, AMCHAM, for hosting this meaningful HR webinar session. Let me share my screen. All right. Today, I'm going to run through the agenda regarding the future of jobs and hiring trends in key business industries as a result of COVID-19 pandemic And we're going to cover especially for Korea and key markets in Asia. I just want to share brief information of our company, PERSOLKELLY. PERSOLKELLY has been publishing the salary survey and market analysis guide over 5 years. And today, based on our market analysis and the market research from the distinguished organizations, I hope this session gives you a little clear idea on tracking the future of jobs and understanding about the hiring trends for the post-pandemic era. After my session, Wednesday will cover the market and hiring trend for the key Asia countries. And if you guys have any questions, please post the questions below and we will do Q&A session at the end of our presentation. Okay then, let's start off the first topic on the future of jobs. We want to identify the trend of the future of jobs as follows. Firstly, the expansion of remote work system. Secondly, the rise of digitalization. And thirdly, the rapid growth of AI technology with the development of automation process. Perhaps we see that remote work and work from home is the most obvious impact of COVID-19 on the workforce. And it has been dramatically increased with the social distancing policy has been encouraged by the government. And for the first time, pandemic has brought up the importance of physical proximity as a reshaping of the future of work. While telecommuting has been possible for many years, we see that remote work during the pandemic was supported by the rapid deployment in the new digital solutions, such as the video conferencing tool. Now we're also using the video conferencing tool right now, and the document sharing tools, and the expansion of the cloud-based computing system. As you can see on the first page of this slide, you can see the chart, and according to our 200 client survey polls, over 51% of our responded clients are currently practicing the working remotely and has willingness to continue the flexible working hours and partial homework-based working system even after the COVID-19 recedes. We see that this is a hybrid working system, and this experience proves some of the benefits of remote work. To the workers, it gives greater flexibility, and from the company's perspective side, there are cost saving and increasing productivity and effectiveness. Let's keep this within mind. And remote work trends also accelerating in the increase and dramatic growth on the rise of the digitalization. We want to say after the COVID-19, digitalization has been essential, and now every business accelerates in adopting the digitalized services. It has been showing the rise in every industry, especially in e-commerce, healthcare, finance, and even to the entertainment and education sector. As social distancing has been kept urged by every country, and with the pursuit of the remote work system, consumers are moving to online channel. And we see that e-commerce business has been dramatically increased. And at the same time, contactless mobile digital payment services has been more focused and even accelerated after the COVID-19. And especially in the healthcare industry, we see that digital health diagnosis, mobile healthcare application, and telehealth, those are the various ways of digital transformation, the way to the healthcare sector's development. In addition, due to COVID-19, we see that digitalization made a progression on education and entertainment field as well. According to the data from Statistics Research in 2020, 51% of internet users in the worldwide are watching more shows through the online streaming services after pandemic. And as the social distancing policy has been prolonged, schools are proactively using the digital tools for the education purpose. And we see that all of these trends are showing the future of jobs are moving to more digital workforce and digitalized work process. And it'll come out with a high demand on the technical and digitalized work skills. Next, let's move on to the final trend we see on the future of jobs, which is the acceleration in AI and the automation process. According to the World Economic Forum survey in 2020, the survey describes that new opportunities will be increased by the high demand in machine learning, process automation, robotics, and definitely AI technology. We see that prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, I want to give you a real example, such as for the customer service field, the tasks were used to be more heavily relied on the customer support and more face-to-face conversational agents before. But now after the pandemic outbreak, we see that face-to-face customer services are severely limited, and AI chatbots, the virtual assistants, are becoming more important than ever. Also, AI technologies are adopting to other healthcare and various sectors as well. We see that according to the McKinsey survey report in 2020, a majority of executives at companies were using AI, and it led to higher revenue. And 44% of the respondents said it literally reduced the cost. And let's talking about the automation process. We see that also the automation process in warehouse and logistics field, it enabled companies to cope with higher volume to the e-commerce sector and even to the manufacturing plants. And we see that companies are seeing automation process and robotic automations literally reduce the workplace density by handling the repetitive works. We think that those automation process and AI technologies are the permanent shift in the way that companies do business, and it'll keeping up even after the pandemic crisis recedes. Likewise, AI and automation process not only reduce the cost, reduce the workplace density, and it literally drives efficiency to the business. Also, it delivers much more higher value. It eventually free up the workers to focus more on the higher value of the task. As we said, these three broad trends of the future of jobs are organically linked and have inevitable influence to each key business industries. And now I want to go through how these three broad trends of the future of work are literally affected in creating the emerging jobs, which also made the traditional jobs relatively more to the redundant roles. Before that, I want to quickly review the data of number of employment comparison. This is the data from the Statistics Korea, and we also reflected on our salary survey guide. As you can see that due to the COVID-19 outbreak, the number of employment in public administration, healthcare, and specialized sciences sector are steadily increasing. On the other hand, employment in the manufacturing, advertising, consulting, and business services sector has been declined, and we're not seeing it on the full recovery stage yet. And Korea government officially announced on investing on the digital economy and R&D for reforming the on-tech economy in 2020. Here's the on-tech. This is a word a little bit maybe not used to the people in the region area. This is a social buzzword in Korean, which is the acronym of non and contact, which means contactless. And that means now Korea government is more focusing on the digitalized economy. And this is the interesting source that I want to share briefly from the World Economic Forum survey published in 2020. And this chart shows the overall emerging jobs and redundant jobs across the industries. It was interesting to highlight the top 5 roles in high demand are all related to the trend of the future of jobs that we mentioned earlier. The top 5 roles are data analysts, AI machine learning specialists, big data specialists, digital marketing, and definitely for the process automation specialists. On the other hand, the relatively decreasing demand, those are more operational administrative roles. Today, as we have limited time to share, I want to touch up the few markets and hiring trend only for the 3 key markets in Korea today: FMCG retail, healthcare, and semiconductor markets. Let's go through the market analysis part for the FMCG and retail. Based on our market hiring analysis from PERSOLKELLY's perspective, in the early days of the COVID-19 outbreak, FMCG was in struggle at the beginning. Before the luxury retail market was a different story. Luxury retail market actually grew more than 20% compared to the last year. And even on our recurring business, we got a lot of inquiring in hiring for this market. And we see that it is because the consumer behavior trend has been shifted to the revenge spending as a result of COVID-19. I believe that many of us are experiencing the depression and fatigue because of COVID-19 situation has been impacted so long. And as there's a restriction in travel abroad, many consumers, including myself, wants to relieve the stress through shopping online and sometimes spending more money than our usual consuming behavior. I was actually one of those revenge spending consumers and definitely also contributed in the growth of retail market. And besides the revenge spending, as the pursuit of social distancing policy, consumers has been shifted from offline to online channels. And now we're experiencing the faster rebound and faster recovery in FMCG markets, especially the growth in the B2C and C2C e-commerce market. According to the data from the e-marketer, we see that South Korea's e-commerce market has ranked 5th globally, expecting the retail e-commerce sales up to $120 billion in 2021. Which has been grown up 9% compared to last year. I want to share the first top global leader in this e-commerce market was China, second was United States, third one comes with UK, and Japan follows after. This data shows that how Korea retail e-commerce business is leading in the global e-commerce market. Also, it is interesting to highlight that there is a rapid growth and expansion in the digital mobile payment platform business with the growth of the digitalization and the e-commerce market's expansion. Through this market trend, we can say that uprising jobs in the FMCG and retail are more digital focused positions such as data analyst, digital marketing, performance marketing, and definitely there's a high demand in logistics and supply chain experts. And data analyst is also a rising job. As a rapid growth in digitization, companies require to collect more large amount of data and provide to new solutions. Likewise, data analyst job is on a high demand, and relatively redundant jobs are more operational level, such as data entry clerks. And also, because of the AI technology adoption, we see that there's a decrease in the on-site customer interactive roles. Let's move on to the next industry, healthcare and life sciences. We see that there is a rapid change in the healthcare industry in Korean market after COVID-19 outbreak because of the adoption of AI, big data, and even machine learnings. I want to share one real example, and Korea was globally highlighted by its big data analysis adoption and AI technology adoption to the healthcare market, which is the real example of smart contact tracing. With the smart contact tracing through AI and big data analysis, Korea was fast enough in tracking the number of COVID-19 confirmed cases, and it helped in reducing the time for identifying a potential number of potential threats and notifying everyone who might be in danger. And also, for another example, AI diagnostics and AI X-ray data identify the symptoms of coronavirus in a couple of seconds and address the patient's critical status. Likewise, we're expecting that AI-based medical software, IT wearable devices, and medical robotic and mobile healthcare applications will be in much more high demand after the COVID-19. I want to share the statistics from the Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, and it showed that the annual average growth on Korea's AI medical device software market has been annually growing nearly 45% since 2018. And now we're expecting this market will be expanded to more than 240 million US dollar in 2023, which is a huge market. Likewise, we see the outlook on the healthcare industry is positive, and there will be a continuous demand in the digital marketing role, clinical sales, and clinical research role. And also AI software engineers are also in high demand. I want to share the interview that I have recently had a chance to interview with multiple country general managers at multinational medical device, bio, and pharmaceutical companies. And they said, and what I heard, their common feedback on their company's short-term and long-term vision was they are more focusing on transitioning to the digital healthcare and more adopting on the AI technologies. Likewise, many of the companies are now requiring to reskilling and upskilling the current employees through digitalization, AI, and those are the skills definitely in high demand after COVID-19 era. And the rather decreasing and redundant jobs are more typical sales and product marketing roles as companies are pursuing more clinical-based commercial and also developing through the more digital healthcare-based roles. And we literally see there's a recruiting trend has been changed that before COVID-19, companies required the candidates from the same industry background. But now, as we're focusing more on the digital healthcare industry, now the companies require to see the candidates not only from the same industry background, but when they're looking for the digital marketing roles, they want to see the candidate from the FMCG, and when they're required to hire IT software engineers, then they want to talk with the people from the other industry, IT industry backgrounds. And this is the current recruiting movement and shifting trend. Lastly, I want to touch on the semiconductor market. And we analyzed that semiconductor market was the strongest and solid even in the COVID-19 crisis. An active development of the 5G, fifth generation infrastructure, and the acceleration of digitalization in many countries, including Korea, it drives much higher demand for more advanced and sophisticated electronic equipment. These include smartphones, Internet of Things, and also smart cars. And all of these things are the main components coming from the semiconductor. We definitely see that there's emerging jobs are more engineer side, process engineer, CS engineer, and software engineers, and data analysis part. And I want to share the statistics from KOTRA, Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency. They also announced that global chip industry will enter the super cycle. And because of the upward trend in Korea's semiconductor market, now they're seeing the Korea semiconductor export will be increased by up to 7% compared to 2020. Also in the recruiting side, as we're in all of the companies and industry were impacted by COVID-19 last year, but semiconductor market for the recruiting part, we actually placed over 100 placements only for the semiconductor market, which shows that the outlook for this industry is very positive and it will keep continue. Today, through this session, I share the ideas about the 3 broad trends and 3 broad waves of the future of jobs after COVID-19 pandemic, and share you guys the specific key industry market analysis with the uprising and redundant jobs due to the pandemic. The impact of pandemic on work made the business to reshape and give directions to the workforces. And now it's time for the business and companies to rethink how to successfully transform the business in this dynamic transition, and now how to reskill and upskill the workforces. Although there's a high demand in the AI technology and digitalized workforces, However, there's a still shortage in the labor market to find the right qualified candidates. And as the technology, even the technology is on the advancement, there's always challenging in following up the trend to the business at the same time. I hope today's session helps you to understand on the future trend of the jobs after COVID-19 and reflected you some insights to think how we could well prepare and predict after the COVID-19 recedes. If any other questions, please feel free to reach me through email. And I think that's about it. And thank you for listening. I'll pass it over through to Wency. Over you, Wency.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, AMCHAM, for hosting this webinar today. It's my pleasure to be here to share with you more insights about the hiring trends beyond Korea in the Asia-Pacific region. I'm Wency with PERSOLKELLY APAC office, headquartered in Singapore. My current role actually allows me to speak with numerous multinational companies who are looking to implement effective HR solutions in the region. I hope to share with you the findings from our PERSOLKELLY APAC workforce insights and hiring trends as many companies are eager to drive growth post-COVID-19. So as all of us are aware, the pandemic has created multiple disruptions in the way we live and work across industries. Many businesses and HR leaders that I speak with have emphasized talent management has taken on a greater importance than before. Oftentimes, talent management is misperceived as an easy task for HR leaders to just manage employee engagement. In reality, it is a complex issue that has crucial implications on companies' survival and success. I hope to take this opportunity to share the insights from the PERSOLKELLY APAC Workforce Insight Survey, which was conducted with an independent research company across 10,000 employees, respondents, and across 12 Asia-Pacific countries. The report will allow companies to consider areas to drive employee engagement and gain employee happiness in the new normal. Although the survey was conducted in late 2019 and early 2020, just before COVID was declared pandemic by the World Health Organization, I will focus on the findings that are still relevant despite the disruptions we all encountered in 2020. So why did we conduct this survey and why is it important for organizations to understand the happiness level of our workforce? I'm sure we understand it is important to keep employees happy, engaged, to maintain a stable and productive workforce. Not to forget, there is also a good pool of contractors and temporary workers who are complementing our main workforce. This will actually help and be very important that we ensure that we keep them happy to reduce turnover costs and raise productivity for the organization. Across all workforce segments, the lack of development opportunities will also contribute to potential employee dissatisfaction at work, which will be detrimental in our business. So there are actually a lot of other interesting factors that are in the report, which I hope to share with you today. So while companies start to think about what is the new areas to keep employees engaged, we ask them questions about what will keep them, what will actually help employees be happy at work. So out of the pool that who responded, we have see the score here in terms of Asia Pacific and Korea for permanent and temporary contract workforce. The score was tabulated based on the respondents responding with a good score between 8 to 9 that will be considered as happy, and those who are rated 4 to 7, who responded with 4 to 7, will be considered as neutral but not reflected into this table. All right, so it is encouraging to know that there are a good number of pool of respondents who are often smiling at work and they are happy in the work they are actually carrying out on a day-to-day basis. So we also ask them questions about whether they are proud of the working for the company they are in. And surprisingly, we realized that the score that we respondents from Korea is significantly lower. I would be inclined to believe many of the respondents in Korea could potentially be rating the score between 7 to 5, which may potentially be neutral, and so it's not rated here. But there are, of course, many other reasons for us to consider, so that it can vary because it varies across various organizations and companies, for us to really explore what are the areas to improve for employees to feel proud of the company they work with. Right. So, being proud in the company that you work with, I realize it's also important for employer branding. For like many of us will be aware, it is also good to see that there is a good score for many employees who responded that they will recommend employees and friends to the company they work with. This is very critical for many of the talent attractions initiatives that we work with. So for many of them who actually look at themselves in the long-term plans for the company, this is also a good consideration, where they look at being very engaged and supporting the company, because they do see there are potential development opportunities, exposures, and the company culture that they enjoy in the company in Asia Pacific. And in this sense, I'm sure you will see for the Korea score is also relatively higher than the general average in Asia Pacific. The encouraging piece will also look at the compliment when a particular respondent express they will compliment a colleague when they do a good job. This is very important in driving good culture and teamwork, which is also very important for many of us in the working environment. And of course, if you look at the next factor that I've managed to pull out from the report, there is another factor where respondents express they are willing to volunteer to be part of projects whenever necessary. This is an indication to show that employees are actually eager to be exposed to more projects and reskill themselves or upskill themselves to be ready for the next challenge. And this will also provide a good indication for HRs in driving learning and development initiatives, or even exposures, talent management initiatives that allow employees to drive engagement in the company. Next, let's look at the hiring trends in Asia Pacific. So if you look at it, I have actually tabulated a chart that have focuses on the Greater China as well as Southeast Asia. Although there are many uncertainties and risks that still remain in the global economy, such as the possible resurgence of infection in some countries, we are optimistic. There are some positive developments in key Asia economies to offset the negatives in some markets. This table is tabulated based on numbers of hiring requisitions that PERSOLKELLY has received from companies over multiple industries. PERSOLKELLY is one of the leading HR service provider with extensive operation in 13 markets. I'm sure this data will allow us to provide a good indication on the market hiring trends. Like many companies, PERSOLKELLY was affected when COVID hit us in 2020. So if we flash back in time, you will recall China was actually the first country to lock down the Wuhan city back in early 2020. And this will be reflected in the chart here that shows as a drastic decline in hiring in Q1 of 2020 for China and of course the various China markets. You'll see that actually we have started to see recovery in the market towards May and June in 2020, which is and as well as Q3, and that's where many clients have started to contact recruiters to start hiring for the demand that they have put on hold in the first part of the year. Although the hiring was slightly tapered off in the Q4 of 2020, which is common in most companies, we do see an increase in hiring requests that's coming up in the first few months of 2021. So very similarly in Southeast Asia, the trend is almost the same, just that we realize, or maybe many of us are aware, in Singapore, Malaysia, and Southeast Asia countries, the city was locked down towards March or April. So that brings pressure in terms of the decline in hiring requisitions in Q2. But in short, for both clusters, you will realize we actually have more hiring requisitions in the second half of 2020 compared to the first half. And the trend will continue to increase in 2021, like what we have experienced in these first few months. So which are some of the hiring industries that are driving this pressure, or rather this force dynamic that's going ahead for many of the industries? It is actually not surprising to know many of the biotech and pharmaceutical medical devices company are driving the trend. In fact, we see a lot of the hiring requests that's coming from public sector, as well as technology companies as well. Whether be it for the biopharmaceutical and medical devices industry companies, they are actually also looking for hiring talents that is in the scientific roles, like clinical research, development specialists. They're also looking for a lot of IT specialists and professionals, be it IT project managers or AI specialists, in supporting the automation and digitalization of their process. So in the other sectors, for example, for logistics and financial insurance, many of the companies are also looking at how they can engage their customers with more digitalization. So these are also the companies who are also looking for a lot of IT professionals on top of supply chain specialists who will be needed to cope with the new demand and surge in demand. I'm sure if many of you have heard the news about the Suez Canal incident this week, and this will be also requires specialists who are very capable in the supply chain industries to be able to address issues that's resulted from the Suez Canal issue. So the other sector that you may want to also be aware, there is a hiring increase in the renewable energy companies. There's growing awareness in driving sustainability and environment awareness. So that's where we see many companies in the solar energy, hydro energy, who are also looking at hiring professionals in Greater China as well as in Southeast Asia. If I look into a bit more details in terms of Southeast Asia countries, we know that countries like in Singapore or Vietnam, where they are still going to be, they're actually very strong in recovering now compared to the other countries in a much higher pace. But there are a lot of manufacturing companies who actually have received a lot of requests. So they are driven very much because of semiconductors, as well as biopharmaceutical demands that they are manufacturing for healthcare and across the market, including masks, devices, or even healthcare equipment. So many of you will also be aware in a city lockdown, many of the social audience in Southeast Asia region actually has picked up the digital adoption. This allowed them to actually keep themselves connected with family, friends, or buying groceries with the ease of using technology platform. I think from the research we realize many of them actually have going to start using the digital tool and will start to use the digital tool going forward. So this will actually allow many of the companies to actually look at better ways to automate their process in order to stay engaged with their customers and drive growth in the region. So of course, with positions and business demand that is going forward in these sectors, there will be a lot of hiring recurring that involves areas like supply chain, e-commerce, and IT project managers, including web development, as well as compliance, and that will actually allow companies to grow in a very significant way. So if I'm going to actually share with you a little bit more information beyond the two clusters and combine the information from other countries in Asia Pacific, we realize that the trend is actually very similar, where there is higher demand in hiring in the second half of 2020 compared to 2020, early part of 2020. But of course, one thing to note, some of the countries are actually recovering much faster, at a faster pace compared to the other countries. And this will be countries like Singapore, China, and Vietnam, where we see more companies in these locations starting to increase their hiring demands. And of course, if you look at it, right, from across the different sectors and across origins, when we're looking at all the various demands that's coming in, that we realize digital marketing is still important for all positions. And companies are looking at professionals who have social marketing skills, social media marketing skills, performance marketing, analytic tools, and design skill. And when I was speaking with some of the companies who are hiring for new talents to set up their teams in the region, they actually explore mobile application is a must, web development is a must, and then they need people who actually ideally they will hope to have people with AI skills as well. And fortunately, I think in some markets in Asia Pacific, there is a growing pool of talent who are actually able to provide this, have these skills to provide the support to some companies. But of course, to be aware, one thing to be aware, there is a language, there is a consideration in language for some markets because English is not actually common in all Asia Pacific markets. So for some of the global companies who are looking to hire very strategic roles, it should not be assumed that you'll be able to find English talents with technical skills and with English speaking language. So some of the companies that we spoke with, they're also considering to hire talents with such advanced skills who have been in the US or in Europe and planning to return back to Asia. But of course, there will be considerations that package remuneration and matching their expectations, because generally companies will actually plan to pay based on local packages instead of expat packages when the talents move back to Asia. It is going to be a long topic, but of course, this can be discussed on a case-by-case basis as we map out the sourcing strategy when we look at the requirements and the talent availability in Asia markets. So with the digitalization, I think many companies actually have started to use AI and chatbots. This is good, but of course, there will be a good demand for customer service support in the advanced skills because, for example, in the e-commerce, there is going to be a demand for customer service support for many of the online merchants that we hear and be able to support them with this growing traffic that is around the world. And across the various organizations, industries, and locations, especially for companies who are looking to expand in Southeast Asia or China in the coming years, they are starting to look for business development and account management professionals. I would say the tech savvy with professionals to look at how they can actually grow organically in the region. So this is a good demand that will apply for all industries. And of course, beyond the technical skills, it is important to take note that many HRs and many companies express it is good to actually have talents who are innovative in this new age environment, one who has possessed the new thinking traits, of course, able to support complex problem solving skill. And, data visualization is so important and being very agile to support the different disruptions that happens in the Asia Pacific region and around the world. So one of the things before I wrap up, I want to take the chance to share with you. PERSOLKELLY also publishes the salary guides for multiple markets where we operate. The salary guides is actually a good compilation of information that we have based on the fulfillment of hiring positions in the Asia Pacific region. So they will actually provide very good indicative data points for many of the companies and HRs when they are looking to expand their workforce or when they're looking to expand into new markets. Should you require more information, feel free to contact Alison or myself, or reach us at our LinkedIn, or be able to contact us through our website as well for any of this information. I hope the information we shared today is going to be valuable for you, and we look forward to be able to support any of you who may require more specific information for recruiting in the market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wenzi. We do have several questions that have come in to the chat box, so I'm going to go through those during the remaining 14 minutes that we have. The first is, I think, addressed to Alison. The question is, generally, consumer industry salary range is low. What about the luxury industry? Is it still remaining in salary, or is it increased a lot, although we have the COVID status?
Yeah, Matthew. I see the other question is related to the first question. So maybe I think it'll better to answer to the both. And I see a question of the salary. Do you see the salary increment at the companies compared to the period before COVID-19? I think many of you will be wondering about the salary increment because it is actually interesting thing that we want to know. But I think just giving you the answer to the question about how much salary increment in the luxury retail or specific industries a little bit more sensitive to answer because it's hard to generalize. As COVID-19 impacted last year, and it depends on the industries, however, we got a lot of real feedback from the candidates. And definitely last year, there was also freezing in salary adjustment at the same time last year. But for some of the manufacturing companies, deduct a few percent of current salary for a few months. And now we're seeing that most of the multinational companies are experiencing the salary adjustment period. Most of the companies are doing like in the Q1. And even though it's hard to generalize, but we see that some of the recovery in the salary adjustment period and the increment rate was not as high compared to the time before COVID. And the first question, luxury retail industry, yeah, we cannot say it's not still remaining, but there's not much increment compared to the time before COVID. I hope this answer helps you.
Thank you. Then some questions for Wenzi. You mentioned the happiness score. Why is the happiness score for Korea significantly lower than the APAC average with respect to the question of, are you proud of the company you're working for?
Well, this is actually a very interesting finding that we have. And in fact, there are many reasons, right, that can contribute to this score. I think two possible reasons I will imagine. One of them is the score is computed based on the respondents rating between 8 to 10 in terms of the rating score. So for any of us or a respondent who has rated between 4 to 7, it will be considered neutral and not reflected in this report. So for many of us who may be still looking at potentially between 4 to 7, it is still worth for companies to explore how we can implement the right initiatives to push the score higher. Another possible reason, I think, where traditionally in the Korea culture, for many traditional Korean companies, especially the same for East Asia countries, it has a more bureaucratic environment, where I think from another research that we have done, in general, the business culture in East Asia will be more of like obey the superior, do what the management say, and focus on harmony. So potentially that could also be a difference compared to other Asian markets, say in Singapore, where companies will encourage workforce to generate new ideas, challenge the status quo, or maybe promote flexible workforce. So there could be various reasons. I will actually encourage companies to really look at it based on their country specific for their operations, so that, to really deep dive into what's the real reason.
Thank you. So another question here. There are many MNCs with regional headquarters in Singapore. What are the main industries that are recovering post-COVID?
Thank you. I believe that's a question for me.
Yeah.
So so in Asia Pacific, I think in the research that we have done, and we see that most of the countries are recovering, as you know, with more vaccines rolling out across the world, and government is supporting the deployment of vaccines to almost all audience or population, right? Hopefully by end of the year, most people will get vaccinated. And I think this will actually allow most countries to start recovering, with countries like Singapore, China, and Vietnam that is actually expanding at a much faster pace compared to other countries. In fact, if you look at in Singapore, to be very specific, like the question, right? The GDP has actually beat analyst support expectations, although it's still contracted in some way. They are actually propelled by the manufacturing sector, because there is a pickup in export from the demand across the world, especially in Asia, for the semiconductor with 5G demands and automotive markets. So there will also be, there is actually, we witness a good demand in terms of biomedical manufacturing and precision engineering sector, which actually helps to drive the growth in Singapore, which will actually be able to also help companies look at how they can expand beyond Asia, because that's where from Singapore HQ, they're also looking at how they can actually expand the business beyond Singapore. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. This is a more of a general question. How do you collect the salary survey data for each industry? Either one of you can answer that, I suppose, but.
Yeah, I can answer the question. So for our salary survey data, we collect the data from our database system through many years. We literally do the salary survey analysis and to the client polls to each active clients. And now currently in Korea market, we have over 500 active clients. And at the end of every year, we got salary survey polls to them and accumulate the information from our database, and we apply it together. So we could see how it has been changed compared to the last year, the previous year, and also made the data like that. Yes.
So maybe to add on, in the Asia Pacific region, PERSOLKELLY has successfully placed over 60,000 positions for various companies. So that's where we have a good database to be able to track what are the salary levels for different positions at different sectors, to provide a good indication in the salary guides per countries. I think one of the other information that is also good to highlight, in our salary guides, practice leaders and country managers will actually provide some insights regarding each sector that is also relevant to a specific who wants to know a bit more about the industry per market.
Thank you. Another question. Q1 recruiting market is better than Q4 2019. It means the market already recovered and much better than before COVID, right?
I'll take that question first. Maybe Alison can add on in a while. We do see an increase in hiring demand, but I think for many of the companies that we speak with, they still remain very cautious. So I think they will be hiring for positions that's critical for expansions and growth. For example, like I shared earlier, they will be hiring more to look at not the same roles as before COVID, but more roles like driving automation, process efficiency, digitalizations, of course, compliance. So there is an increase in hiring as compared to COVID-19 period. But I will say, these companies are still very cautious in terms of hiring, just to make sure that they are hiring for the new era.
Let me add on one more comment to the Lance's point. Yeah, we believe that we're on the recovering stage, but not full recovery yet. But compared to the same time last year, we're really impacted on the COVID-19, like same time last year was like March, right? But now we see that there's a lot of release on the freeze hiring positions. But we see that our PERSOLKELLY company, the clients majority are multinational companies, and they are impacted by the global decisions. So for the hiring part, we see that they're still cautious about hiring for the full-time position, but we see that there's an expansion in the gig economy, such as contracted and outsourcing positions. So there's a lot of high demand in those contracted and also outsourcings. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've gotten through the questions, and I want to thank you both for a very clear and informative presentation. And Wenzi, thank you for visiting us over here in Korea. We appreciate you, coming out, and Allison, thank you. So to all of our audience out there, thank you for making the time today, and please be on the lookout for future AMCHAM HR committee events. So thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all. Thank you. Bye-bye.